In this tiny California town, people once spoke a language outsiders couldn't understand.
Gano crop good and plenty higs. Bald dames come long ways by Ganos and Johnny Pete.
But today, it's almost extinct. It's called Boontling, and its unique nature has baffled outsiders and fascinated linguists. A language born of inside jokes, town gossip, and the history of the town itself. I'm in Boonville, a small town in California of about 1,000 people 2 hours north of San Francisco. I'm here to discover the story of Boontling, the town, the community behind it, and the people working to keep it alive. In Boonville, I was fortunate enough to meet one of the last speakers, or harpers, of Boontling.
I'm Rod DeWitt, and I've been speaking Boontling probably for about 40 years, and my boot handle would be Tubbs, and that's because I play the drums. Eildam pike to the chiggerel nook for gorms for a ball belgemer. The gorms are strong, the nook was bare, and the poor belgemer had nemer.
Like many regional dialects, Boontling borrowed from the many languages that contributed to its foundations. Scots and Irish settlers, the local Native American Pomo people, and Spanish speakers, as well as general folk shortenings of words around town. But what makes Boontling really interesting isn't the languages some of the words come from, it's its own new words it created from stories around the town.
So Boontling is an anecdotal lingo. So there was a man who could drive a team really well, and his name was JP. So the term became jape, to drive a team. And then as we started driving cars, japing is driving a car, a japeway is a highway. So it kind of evolved that way. This is anecdotal lingo.
The lingo of Boontling was never static, with harpers continually adding new words to try to shark or trick their friends or outsiders.
And so this is what Wes would do. He'd call me up. Another time he'd call me and says, Deacon, did you know that I was a bull rusher? I knew that one. I said, I'm really sorry to hear that too, Wes. He says, okay, well, I didn't shark you on that one.
The result was that if you came to Boonville in the early 1900s, you might hear someone say that they harped telephone on the Bucky Walter. In other words, that they made a phone call on the payphone. Or someone else might say that they had a ball horn of Zeus, a nice cup of coffee.
But Wes would call me up in an afternoon, evening, something like that. He'd call me up and say, hey, Tubbs, Granny's organ. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to touch that one, Deacon. And he's like, no, it's not what you think. So Grandma's finally gets that organ that she wanted, and she's going to learn how to play it, by golly. And next thing you know, there's a little box of something on there, and then some magazines, and then some doilies, and then there's sewing. And pretty soon, Granny's organ is just covered in clutter. So Granny's organ is a boot word for clutter.
The anecdotal nature of Boontling, tied up in close-knit community gossip, wasn't just limited to individual words, but extended to the mythologized origins of the language itself.
There was a wagon train that came over. At one point, the wagon master had a child with one of the women on the wagon train, one of the young women on the wagon train. So she was up in the hills over there, and the other gals wanted to kind of talk about it and not embarrass her.
This would make it an argot, a language used to prevent outsiders from understanding conversations in the community. Many locals, though, describe it more as a fun activity of speaking playfully, a sort of language game. And at its peak, it functioned almost as its own language, used in daily life widely around the town.
From Mountain House to Navarro, by 1,000 people, and probably a good portion of them understood it if they didn't actually speak it in its heyday, which would have been about the 1880s. There's a story about one kid who joined the Navy. He spoke so much Boontling, he had to actually kind of learn English.
Whether or not the origin stories around Boontling that Rod and other speakers share are historically true is contested, but that kind of misses the point. The lingo probably did originally arise to allow discussion without city folks or brightlighters understanding it. And it became widespread due to the close-knit nature of the town, with gossip contributing directly to new words in the language.
The way Wes described, the origin of the languages, first it was, they didn't want the parents to know, or they didn't want the girls or the boys to know. But then, everybody gets married and become parents, and, it's really hard to say what sparked it, but something happened out here and it did.
Ultimately, a big part of harping Boont is knowing the history of the town and the community members who contributed to its origins and vocabulary.
Doc Adams, he coined a word, fuzzy, and that's a peach. There was a guy, Mickey Bloyd, and he would just get on people's tail and just road rage them. So now Mickey's the term for road raging. So it's a real good-natured language. People kind of make fun of each other, but in a good-natured way.
The more I spoke with Rod and researched the language, the more I realized that its story is really the story of Boonville itself. Boonville's agrarian roots shaped its early existence, as did the euphemisms and sense of humor of the town and time period.
So it was a feed store, and the proprietor was known to be kind of randy, and his wife showed up just about the time he was in the back room with a local maiden on a stack of burlap sacks. So she asked the assistant where her husband was, and he says, I think he's in the back burlapping. So now we get into the notch harpins. I don't need to get into it too much, but it's one of the charms of the language.
In fact, learning the history of Boonville, you quickly realize that the sense of humor and linguistic creativity ran deep around the town.
Okay, now right here, there is a place called the Anytime. And so this is all the guys, they go there after work, after a good day in the sheep sheds and out in the woods. This was right downtown. And then they had a school election, whatever, they voted the town dry. So they took this building, moved it to the gravel pits on the far end of town. They moved it down there and they renamed it the Anyhow. We can't have it anytime, we'll have it anyhow.
And the proximity to San Francisco, as highways and cars made the town less secluded, allowed the argot to remain relevant as the community stayed resilient against city dwellers, or what they call bright lighters.
But then we also use Boont to kind of talk about people that drive through the region here in their Lexuses and all that to do the wine tasting. The sentiment sometimes is welcome bright lighters to the Boont Fratty region, share your higs, storm, burl, slug, and have a good time and pike,
However, as with so many small towns and their respective languages, Boonville did not remain a small, secluded town forever.
So remember I was saying that it was an agrarian language in a really isolated place. A Kimmy would come along and then people would just chat a little bit, Eventually the Italians came in, but they got pretty good at Boontling too. I'd say right up through the 50s, it was still pretty relevant in the 60s. Then all the hippies moved in. And that changed things. Everybody was growing little gorilla pot patches out in the woods. They started planting grapes. It's just obsolete. It's irrelevant at this point.
Over time, as elders passed away, locals got priced out, and vineyards swept across Northern California, the language left with its community.
So payphones used to have a sign that said Bucky Walter on them that phone company actually provided. Now there aren't any more payphones anymore. That's gone. Bit by bit, everything is just kind of going away. So it's really, it's on its last legs.
A language built from local jokes, nicknames, and shared memory could probably only survive in a place where everybody knew everybody else. As that world fades, the words fade with it.
It's hard to just talk by yourself. And people could, maybe want to have you see somebody if you do that a lot. When I was hanging around with anybody else who knows how to speak it, then, we generally kind of fall into it a little bit. But there's just fewer and fewer people. I really don't have anybody I can talk with now.
The many isolated, close-knit communities across America in the 1800s would have had thousands of folk dialects and localisms. Boontling is most unique for the resilience of the Harpers and Boonville's community, continuing to shark bright lighters even as their isolated valley was engulfed in NorCal's wine region.
I guess a lot of those other small towns, people maybe didn't continue to speak it past a certain point, but...
or they passed away. I don't think they ever quit speaking it. It's just that the younger people didn't, stop learning it.
Boonville is home to the Anderson Valley Historical Society, which is also helping to preserve and remember Boontling. But ultimately, all local argots, dialects, and languages are kept alive through transmission, people like Rod taking the time to learn the language, and their community supporting them throughout the process. Rod learned Boontling from speakers like Wes Smoot, who passed away shortly before my visit.
Basically, as soon as I moved there and started meeting some of the old-timers, I want to know what they were saying about me, so I had a little incentive to learn it. And then the old timers like like Bobby Glover, he was a friend. Jack June, especially Wes Smoot. They took me under their wing, and you know, any questions I had, then he was really great.
And even today, memories remain dotted across America.
It's well known around the world. A friend of mine, he called up to Oregon or Washington, I forget which, about getting this a rain suit. And the guy says, "Oh, so you're looking for Pearland Netties?" And Carrie's like, "What?" So somehow he knew. I mean, you know, you'd be surprised where it's just people pop up and they know a little bit of Boontling.
The folks here at the local Anderson Valley Museum and passionate speakers like Rod are valiantly keeping the language alive, and its identity may be preserved in branding for local microbreweries, street signs, or slang. Boontling is more than just a collection of unusual words. It's a record of the people who built this valley, their humor, their gossip, their friendships, and their stories. Every strange word carries a little piece of community memory. Whether or not Boontling survives another 100 years, it's a beautiful reminder that places are made not just by their buildings or landscapes, but by the stories people tell about them. And to me, it's something worth remembering.
So he says, Harpen Johnums over Horn of Zees, Booners will Niemer at a place called Weiss. So in other words, we'll never be telling stories over a cup of coffee at a place called Weiss anymore.
That was super fascinating.
Yeah,
That was really fun. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure sharing it. Yeah, I've missed, you know, speaking it since Wes is gone.
Yeah.